What is going on? Astrolabians, welcome to the Friday evening Astrolabe. Apologies for the false start there. Restream has been fined for several weeks now. It actually hasn't given me grief in a while, but it decided to be retarded tonight for some reason and created a new stream instead of connecting to the existing one. But I'm an experienced live streamer now, so I caught it in time, killed it, started it over, and only a few people will ever know. The gastrolabe, ooh, that's pretty good. Yeah, look what's sitting here next to me. There's no way that I'm actually going to dig into this while I'm yeah, that is pineapple on pizza. Let's see, can I get the light on it just right? There's no way I'm going to be able to eat and talk at the same time, but look at that lovely, lovely pineapple and pepperoni. Marco's Pizza for dinner tonight. There's no way I'm going to be able to eat and talk at the same time, but it'll sit here teasing me the whole time. It is Friday night. That means if you're a member of the King Pill Discord, you know what night it is. It is Schizo Stream / King Pilled Movie Night. And let's see where the voting is at right now. People are voting on what we're going to watch. It looks like we're probably going to have a winner. The two choices I gave them were 28 Days Later and The Men Who Stare at Goats. And as of right now, The Men Who Stare at Goats is winning. Now, if you would like to watch 28 Days Later, and you are not a member, I guess if you are a member, or if you're not a member of the King Pill Discord, then you could go join right now. Sign up at kingpill.com, and you could go cast the tide-changing vote, and then join us for it. It's always a great evening. We've watched a couple of movies the last couple of weeks. We watched There Will Be Blood last week, and then before that was Starship Troopers. So tonight, probably Men Who Stare at Goats. Maybe 28 Days Later if it rallies. Probably Men Who Stare at Goats. We're making our way through. I don't know if you call Men Who Stare at Goats an iconic movie. The other two definitely are. Starship Troopers and There Will Be Blood are definitely iconic movies. I don't know if you'd call Men Who Stare at Goats iconic, but it definitely is notable and timely. So, yes, please come join us. That's the best way you can support the show is, number one, by hitting the like button. Then by joining the King Pill Discord at kingpill.com, becoming one of the privileged elite few. And then there's also, you can leave a super chat on the show here today. Or you can go to the links in the description. There's Buy Me a Coffee. There's a Cash App. And you can shoot some dough over my way. And as long as you guys keep doing that, I'm going to keep bringing you the banger clips, the most important news of the day as I see it, best Twitter threads or Twitter posts or interesting articles that I stumbled across, whatever's piquing my fancy at the moment. So today, probably be a little bit shorter than usual, in part because I got to get done in time to go do the King Pill movie night. But what do we got? We got Doge. Doge has been enhanced. There's another executive order that's kind of flown under the radar, but Doge is getting leveled up. It's funny how it started off as just being, it's basically going to be like this advisory thing. It's not even going to be a government agency. It's just going to be some sort of advisory deal. And then, it's actually going to be a government agency. Actually, we're going to rename an existing agency and then create a temporary organization within that agency, both for Doge purposes. And now they're getting more and more authority. So we'll get into that. I got a good thread breaking that down. I got some clips from various different people in the administration, including our boy 48, Pete Hegseth, a funny one from Doug Burgum. What else here? We got a Scott Bessent clip in here, and then Marco Grande. Marco Grande is really leaning into the Grande lately. So I got one of those, and then I've promised this one to you guys for a couple episodes. So we're going to get into it today. This long-ass thread from John Carter. Very, very worthwhile. Powerful mutual, John Carter, at Martian Wordlord on Twitter. He has a 37-tweet thread in which he explains why Canada has become a security threat to the U.S. and how Canada can probably be bloodlessly conquered by color revolution. So I'll read that, and then got some odds and ends things to round it out. We'll talk. Got a couple things here about women voting and repealing the 19th, but it is an astrolabe, so we have to start with some slop, some wholesomeness. It's 2002, and you're living in Orange County, California. Are you ready for some nostalgia? Hold on to yourselves. This one's going to hit you right in the soul. Oh, how is that 23 years ago? How did we get so old? The Zoomers will never know what it was like. Never. Oh, I'm ready to go back. Can we go? Can we just go back? Can we go back to late 90s, early 2000s? I'll take Jinko jeans. Fine. Heelys, sure. Heelys might be a little bit later, but man. All right, let's keep it going. Paul Suda back on the show with another recap. These have been bangers. I haven't watched this one. This is the first one now. This is the first one I haven't watched before playing it. I get to react to this in real time with you guys. Paul has proven himself with a whole sequence of bangers. I've been looking forward to this one, and finally he dropped it in my DMs, and I was like, yes, excellent, let's go.
Delta's a winning organization, and so we want a winning workforce.
Girls, come on. Leave the saving the world to the men? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Live fast, die young, bad girls do it well. Live fast, die young.
1, 2, 3, igniting minute. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, no.
Our plane crashed. It's upside down.
That's another example. There's a very long list of the fraud, waste, and abuse that Doge is identifying on a daily basis.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within. What is the positive vision that animates this shared security compact that we all believe is so important?
The criminals are going home, the border is sealed shut, America is safe, sovereign, proud, and free. We are a nation that everyone in the world understands all across this planet. You do not come here illegally, you will not get in, you will go to jail, you will go home, you will not succeed.
Looking at Air Force One as it makes a flyover.
Our country is doing well again, and we have spirit all over the world. There's spirit again. We brought it back, and it's been less than 4 weeks.
West House has been
If American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg's scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk.
Even after the president signed an executive order saying it has to stop, the famous, the sort of whatever deep state bureaucrats still pressed send on $80 million last week to go to the Roosevelt Hotel in New York and other places last week.
Now they have over 100 guys. And he attracts very young people with high IQs, you know. Some people attract very beautiful people. I think I like them better, actually. But he attracts young people that are brilliant, and they love the country too. But I said, what trait do they really have? And the trait that they really have was that they're extraordinary with computers. They can take them. He said they make love to their computer. I said, I don't want to hear about that.
So, like, President Trump is, like, he's having Elon go through all of this stuff to, like, see where America's taxpayer dollars are going to, and, like, they're finding so much corruption, and I just wish that they would stop, because it's really, like, none of their business, and I enjoy paying my taxes to other countries, and I love that it goes into, like, other people's pockets instead of mine, and I just really love that, and I hate that he's deporting all of these people, because I also enjoy all of my tax dollars going to pay for all of their living, even though they came here illegally. And everything is like not going according to plan. Like, he's like kept his word on everything he said. Like, everything he said, he kept his word on. Like, presidents aren't supposed to do that. This is the stupidest thing ever. I just wish I'd stay at what? I hate him too.
Paul Suda, sir, you have outdone yourself. I think this is the best one yet. That was fantastic. I'm so glad you guys got that. It was Goonies music. Yes, Mr. Oblivion, you got to go back. It was Goonies music. It was so perfect. Wow, that one was awesome. Go follow Paul Suda. I was thinking, we got 2,047 views here, and this is just absolutely criminal. Absolutely criminal. Only 2,000 views, and it's been out for 20 hours. But there's something that's symbolic about this. 2047, let's do a little math. So 2047 is 22 years away. Baron Trump is currently 18 years old. That means that 2047 is the first year of the Baron Trump Imperium. That's when he gets elected at 35, president 35 to 39, and then his age 40 year, that's the year 2047. 20 years after 47. Man, okay, I gotta rebookmark that and make sure that I have that. I'm gonna interact with that at a better time of the day where it's likely to get more traction, because that is just a banger. Well done, sir. Okay, let me see. Let me play this quick Doug Burgum clip for you, and then I'm gonna go grab one of the clips that was in that. I just remembered that I had some tweets about it that I want to go grab and refer to. But this one was funny. Brett Baer with Doug Burgum, the new Secretary of the Interior. You might remember him as the guy with American colonist physiognomy. So Fox News does this little shoot here with him. I don't know why it is that Doug Burgum is the basketball guy. Like, why? Like, Scott Bessent didn't go shooting hoops. I don't know why Doug Burgum is shooting hoops, but he is. And look at how dirty they did him.
Support that. Get every American outdoors and playing.
Nice. All right, let's see what you got.
Okay, here we go. First shot since the broken Achilles.
Okay. All right, Mr. Secretary, nice shot.
Did you catch it? Did you catch it? They didn't even hide it. They made it so obvious. First shot since the broken Achilles. First of all, broken Achilles. All right, whatever. Sometimes you say silly things on camera in the moment. The first shot on the broken Achilles.
Broken Achilles.
Okay.
Cut. Obviously, he missed the first shot, and they had to go back through and get a second shot and make it look like it. They could have. Oh, there were so many. They did the guy dirty. I guess maybe it's his fault for just not making the shot in the first place. You make the shot in the first place, and it never has to happen. I don't know why this is happening. Period. Why are they meeting with Doug Burgum meet him out in a mine somewhere, or like on horseback on the plains somewhere? So, like, why is he in a high school gym shooting hoops? I don't understand. This is what happens when the boomers run the show, man. $5 super chat from Jackalope. Good to see you, man. He says, we're so back. That's right. And then $2 from Seasider. Baron Carino. Carino. What is Carino? What's that a reference to? I feel like I should know that, but I don't recognize it. Shout out to Seasider, though. Seasider is a notorious super chatter if you are an old Glory Club appreciator. All right, now let me find this clip real quick. Just got to scroll back through my tweets. Because, oh yeah, Luke Groman went on Tucker. I cannot wait for that to drop. That's going to be such a good conversation to listen to. There was something that Trump said there was a clip there of him talking about the Doge boys, and this is he is truly one of the greatest comedians alive, and I'm not even saying that ironically. Unironically, there is no one better at stand-up comedy in the world right now than Donald Trump. Let me play this whole clip. He's just in his lane, moisturized. Look at him go.
What we're finding and what we found, and these were all found by these computer geniuses. I asked Elon, what trait do these have? You know, they started off with 12 guys, then they had 30 guys, then they had 57 guys. Now they have over 100 guys, and he attracts very young people with high IQs, you know. Some people attract very beautiful people. I think I like them better, actually. But he attracts young people that are brilliant, and they love the country, too. But I said, what trait do they really have? And the trait that they really have was that they're extraordinary with computers. They can take them. He said they make love to their computer. I said, I don't want to hear about that. Doesn't sound too good. He said they can take apart the most complex computer instruments and literally put them back blindfolded. So when they go into some guy that's ripping off the country by doing some of the things you've just heard or what you're going to hear, they can't be bullshitted. You know, they can't say, oh, gee, there was a mistake. There was a big mistake. And we're finding hundreds of billions of dollars worth of fraud, waste and abuse, but I think fraud will be the number one as we see. But listen to this on the program. There are four. What we're finding.
First takeaway from this: hey, Gooners, your president disapproves. Trump hates Gooners. You hear it? You hear it here? He's like, I don't want to hear about that. I wonder how that conversation went. Like, did Elon tell him, like, they like to make love to their computers? Or like, what sort of conversation were they having? Were they riffing on this and they started talking about putting their dicks in computers or something? Like, how did that conversation happen? I want to know. Then here, I said, Elon attracts, this is basically my rephrase of him. I was howling watching this. He's like, Elon attracts a bunch of goofy-looking nerds who do unthinkable things to computers. I'm happy to spend my time hobnobbing with the beautiful people, with the beautiful people while they're autism maxing all over my enemies. My liege! And Jack's complete lack of surprise says, Chud maxing, he is the apex chud. Our president is the apex chud. Cody says that's legit hilarious and true. And I said he hired a bunch of autistic assassins to gut his enemies and drag their digital entrails all over the floor. And he's pleased as punch with himself. I don't want to hear about that. Oh, man. he's made a number of different jabs at him. I like how he says this. It's such masterful work. You can see the way his brain is working. He attracts very young people with high IQs. Some people attract very beautiful people. He attracts young people with high IQs. In other words, they're kind of goofy looking. It's like on the interview with Hannity. He and Elon were on with Hannity, and he said he was talking about the Doge kids, and he goes they dress even worse than he does, pointing at Elon. It's such a Trump thing to just like get hung up on something like that. Like, you got to wear a suit, but in this case, he's like, I got a bunch of like super autistic Zoomers, the broccoli hair, and the broccoli haircut, and then they just show up and they just do things to computers. They can make the computers do stuff. They can take them apart and put them back together again. Which is funny because like being able to take apart the computers and put them back together again isn't like that big of a deal. There's a lot of kind of ordinary hobbyists who could very easily do that. Really, it's like the software that they take apart and put back together. But like Trump is not a software guy. I'd imagine there's a reason he has his hot blonde, part of the hot blonde occupied government, who sits there and writes out his tweets for him because he's like, you guys take care of all this stuff for me. I'm Donald Trump. I pay people to run my software for me. So he's like, I hired in all these crazy Zoomers, and just imagining the dude with the ramen haircut who shows up to some tenured boomer who's like 45 and who's been like 45 years of government service. Is a civil servant, very proud. Who has his pension, and he's all just stuffy and uptight, and he gets some like awkward ramen noodle haircut dude who can't make eye contact with him, and comes up and he's like, "Hey, what did you do this week? What did you get done recently?" "Yeah, it seems like your position's not doing much. So, based on my tablet here, yeah, you're getting your walking papers, buddy." I almost feel sorry for these so-called civil servants. They had no idea what was going to hit them. And then they just got bum rushed by the Zoomer army. It's so good. More of our president being a savage.
I understand Maine.
This is today at the Council of Governors or whatever it's called, a meeting with all the with like either all the governors or a bunch of prominent governors. So Trump is speaking there, and this happened.
Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics. Every state has a responsibility to comply with Title IX. They have an obligation, a legal obligation. And we'll be enforcing aggressively, and we're going to be protecting our citizens. We're going to protect. So just to end this administration, I understand.
That's like the Game of Thrones dragon. Was his name like Dogon or something like that? Drogon, I think. There's that one GIF that people use all the time of him just going straight across the screen, just completely flamethrowered the old broad. Maine governor, probably a lesbian, just absolutely cooked her, ended her political career. You could see you could hear his ire was getting up too. He was like, "Bitch, how, like, I'm the president. The people have spoken. Nobody wants this shit. All right, you're going to see me in court? I will happily crush the life out of you in court. My king!" And a couple hours later, The U.S. Department of Education announced that the Office for Civil Rights is launching a Title IX violation investigation into the Maine Department of Education and Maine School District. It says Maine would have you believe that it has no choice in how it treats women and girls in athletics. That is, that it must follow its state laws and allow male athletes to compete against women and girls. Let me be clear. If Maine wants to continue to receive federal funds from the Education Department, it has to follow Title IX. If it wants to forego federal funds and continue to trample the rights of its young female athletes, that too is its choice. OCR will do everything in its power to ensure taxpayers are not funding blatant civil rights violators. This is from Craig Traynor, the Acting Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights. A civil rights investigation announced 2 hours later. You know, at the end of the day, what's going to happen is it's going to be the libs who want to repeal the Civil Rights Act. That's what's coming. We are going to take that Civil Rights Act and we are going to shove it so far up your keister, you will beg us to get rid of it. This is so... It's like walking out on a nice summer afternoon in the late spring, with a nice breeze. It's like, I don't know, 75, 78 degrees, and the sun just kind of washes over you. You just stand there, sort of listen to the birds twitter for a little bit. That's how that feels. This governor thinks she's going to stand up and she's going to be the resistance. And not only does she get bludgeoned in the press conference, but immediately afterwards, the Department of Education, on its way out, announces an investigation and they're going to be freezing federal funds. And don't you, every single one of you libertarians out there who wants to start talking about the 10th Amendment, or you dumbass boomer cons, don't you say a single thing to me about the 10th Amendment. This is withholding federal funds. You ought to be very happy at the prospect of the federal government withholding federal funds for anything. There is nothing remotely implicating states' rights here. And even if there was, I wouldn't care. The 10th Amendment didn't prevent anything to this point. The Constitution is ours to use as we see fit. That's all it is. It's very useful as a fiction. That's the thing. It can actually be, what's masterful about the Constitution is that it can be interpreted validly in just about any way, which means it's incumbent upon the citizenry to ensure that their leadership is going to interpret it in the way that best suits the citizenry. And in that sense, the Constitution is brilliant. It's a brilliant, brilliant political innovation. And right now, what's important is that the Constitution be interpreted as authorizing a powerful Article 2 executive that exercises absolute control over the executive branch and tells Congress and the judiciary, I am happy to listen and value your advice. You give me some legislation, I'll choose whether or not I'm going to veto it. Otherwise, I'm the one running the government right now. I'm happy. I want to have a good relationship with you. I'm very happy for you to play your role. You know, put some great legislation together, bring it to me, and yeah, I'll sign off on it. This doesn't have to be antagonistic and hostile. But I'm the chief executive. What I say goes. And it'll be this way for 4 years. At the end of 4 years, yeah, have another election. Decide if you like the way things are going. If you don't, vote for the other guys. If you do, boy, do I have a runner-up candidate for you. Or a follow-up candidate. We'll get more into the woman issue. The woman question, the WQ, a little bit later here in the show, but they're continuing this whole Fort Knox thing. Here's Elon at CPAC yesterday, which You guys, I'm sure you guys at this point have seen the pictures of Elon and him with the chainsaw, and he's dressed up like the Doge meme that they made the AI picture with the Department of Government Efficiency Doge with Elon with his shades on and his gold chain. I think it was like Autism Capital or something had tweeted at him and said you need to, like, if Trump gets elected, then you need to do an event dressed as the AI meme. So Elon said he would, so he did it here at CPAC, and the whole thing is just it's just total scenes. It's 100% wrestling promo vibes. I said that this is the McMahon family's world, and we're all just living in it. Total wrestling promo. Some people are taking this way too seriously. It's CPAC. If anything, this is all that CPAC merits, is just making a clown show out of it. Who cares? They're having fun. They're hyping up the base. Let them have their fun. But he did mention a few interesting things, and so I've got some clips from that. This first one, they're continuing to press this Fort Knox thing.
What's going on with? Tell us about Fort Knox. It's Kentucky. It's a military base. It's a ton of gold, tons and tons and tons
like
of gold.
5,000 tons of gold, or
5,000 tons of gold are there in the ground in like this. I mean, it's a very secure
I think
thing.
we all want to see it.
I'd love to see it.
Like, this is your gold, by the way. It's the public's gold.
Do you think it's not there?
I don't know. But I think
we just want to see it.
Yeah, we want to go see it and just make sure, like, somebody did a spray paint some lead or something, you know?
Yeah.
Like, is this real gold? Fight at the bar, you know?
Didn't dent.
But I think, honestly, part of
this guy's got a hell of a profile. He's got little beady eyes if you look at him straight on, but that profile is pretty remarkable. He obviously dyes his hair too, but he's pretty chiseled, pretty sharp features.
This also is just like, let's have some fun and like I said, all this gold at Fort Knox, it's the public's gold. It's your gold. So, like, I think you have, like, a right to see it.
You want to take a tour?
You know? Yeah. I think we should have do a tour. And then the president last night was like, I think he's in favor of it. That would be cool. And then it should be like a live tour. Like, you can see what's going on, open the door, like, what's behind it.
Well, and there's...
I think I'd watch that.
Oh, are you kidding?
Yeah.
I mean, what does 5,000 tons of gold look like?
What does
How
it
big
look
is
like?
that? Is it the size of this?
It's got to be pretty big, you know?
It's got to be a lot of
Maybe
gold.
there's some other stuff in there, like just walk around, like, I don't know, maybe they got some other stuff in there.
Are you thinking about auditing the Federal Reserve as well, which is obviously
yeah, sure.
Regulatory economy?
Yeah, audit the Fed would be very interesting. Speaking of auditing the Fed, Screwed Up Texas says, Tom Luongo on the Pete Quinones show recently was great. Yes, absolutely. It's very good. I think it's out for the public now. So you should definitely, if you're one of those who is not supporting Uncle Pete, then, or as Taylor Brown calls him, Papa Pete. If you're not supporting Papa Pete, you got to wait for it to be out for the public. Well, it is available to the public now, so you got to go listen to it. This whole thing is, I'm so fascinated. I'm so fascinated by how they're playing this up, because this is obviously kayfabe. They're obviously kayfabing the hell out of this. Trump is doing it. Bessent is doing it. Musk is doing it. They're all playing this up intentionally. And if they're going to go do this, they know the gold is there. Now, was the gold there before? Has this been part of this, like, the mass exodus of gold out of the LBMA brought across the water? Seems pretty obvious that it's, I don't know, the list of candidates who could be purchasing and importing all of that gold is pretty small. So it's got to be the Fed, it's got to be Jamie Dimon, it's got to be someone very large bringing all of this in. Now, are they doing that because the gold wasn't in Fort Knox and they need to make sure that it is, or has the gold been in there all the time and they're adding to it? But why does the public need to be brought along with all of this? Why do we need to get everyone like, yeah, let's go do a video tour of Fort Knox? The thing that people always just like, it's when you want to think of like the worst person ever, or you want to do like the thought experiment, You do go back in time and kill baby Hitler. And when you want to talk about something that's super, super secure, you talk about Fort Knox. So we're gonna go do a video tour of Fort Knox. I really doubt that they're not going to. I really doubt they're actually going to do a video tour. However, I've got this little thing in the back of my head that's like, I would have doubted that they would do a number of the things that they've done so far. You know, I would have doubted that they would be immediately initiating a Title IX investigation into the Maine Department of Education a couple hours after Trump bludgeoned her in public. You know, there's a lot of things they're doing that I would have doubted before. So maybe they are going to go do a video tour of Fort Knox. If they did, then why? What's the purpose of all of this? And the only conclusion I've come to so far is just that they're trying to get people used to and accustomed to the idea of having a relationship with gold again. They want it to be publicly evident and obvious that gold is going to play a huge role in this new age of the country. So they're getting people's consciousness attuned to that. That's the only thing I've come up with so far. It feels pretty 4D chessy, but I don't know. I'm very open to any other suggestions as to not why they're. I mean, if you've been listening to Tom Luongo, and if you've been listening to Scott Besson, it's pretty obvious that we're moving to some sort of a gold standard. But what's the necessity for this big publicity stunt around the gold in Fort Knox? Like, why can't they just audit it and then say, oh, yeah, it's there? I mean, yeah, maybe like people wouldn't believe it. Like, would it be that if there's a shred of doubt, they're trying to eliminate any shred of doubt that the gold is actually there? They're like, look, world, we're going to put it on camera. All of the gold and more is here. So you don't have to do any guessing. And we're going to start from like a completely stable base as we reset the monetary system. That's essentially what I've been able to conclude so far. But they've got me absolutely hooked on this. I'm fascinated by the way that they're going about this because it's such obvious kayfabe that it means we now going forward have to keep in mind the fact that there's people who are in power now who are purposely executing kayfabic operations. There's so much planning and foresight and coordination, and there's genuine competence at the helm, which is a huge white pill. Let me check this, see some of the comments here. King Pilt said baby Hitler's in Fort Knox. That's right, you heard it here first, folks. Yeah, Jeff Garrick says, I would have never imagined an ASMR deportation video from the White House actual. Right. So, like, if they're going to post an ASMR deportation video from the White House account, then sure, they'll go do a live video tour of Fort Knox. Fenderson Bound says, if they do a video tour, you can be sure that they have plans to move the gold to a more secure facility directly afterward. That's a good point. Yes. Wit says, have you been watching them try to keep silver below 32.50? It's uncanny. Yes. Yes. It seems silver is about to explode. There's so much that's going to happen between now and the next, in iterations, the next 6 months, the next 12 months, the next 18 months. You got to be ready to hold on to your hats because things are going to start flying. Straight Buster said, someone at the OGC stream said they have Uncle A on a golden throne with life support using his psychic energy to power the nation. All right, AI video experts, you have some marching orders here. Go create that for us. Politically Catholic says, I don't know, I think maybe some of the gold is missing. The pattern so far has been Nuremberging the old regime. And that would be another possibility, I suppose, would be, this is getting even more 4D chessy, but so maybe some of the gold is missing and there's nefarious reasons why it's missing, but for whatever reason, they need to publicly display the fact that there's something, and they need people to see that and connect. Ultimately, this is like they want people connected, like viscerally connected to gold for some reason. And I don't know what that, like, yeah, that's plausible. It's plausible that some of it is missing, and that, but then if some of it's missing, why do this whole charade? Because if anything, if some of it's missing, that means the U.S.'s financial position is actually even worse on paper than it is right now. I mean, it seems very obvious that they're going to be marking the gold to market at some point very soon. There's a good interview on CNBC with Scott Bessent. It dropped yesterday, I think. Go listen to it. It's like 30 minutes. And they rapid fire hit him with questions. And he is a very coy question answerer. There's multiple different points where sometimes he just straight up says, I'm not going to answer that question. And then there's other times where he answers a question in such a way, and then they clarify, they ask a clarifying question, and he just reiterates what he said without directly answering their question. So you can read between the lines pretty easily on a lot of the stuff that he's saying. Yeah, it seems very obvious that they're going to be marking the gold to market. That was one of the questions they asked. Is they said, when you talked about beginning to monetize the balance sheet, were you talking about marking the gold to market and putting that in the sovereign wealth fund or something like that? And he said, when I was talking about monetizing the balance sheet, that was not what I was referring to, or that was not what I had in mind. And they said, so are you going to be marking the gold to market? And he said, when I said that, that was not what I had in mind. So there's something else that he had in mind, and he's refusing to answer the question on whether or not they're going to mark the gold to market, which to me, I think is a very good sign that they are going to. And it's a very obvious move to make. It's just a matter of how exactly they choose to make it and what the follow-on decisions are from there, because there's a number of different ways they could go about it. Politically Catholic says, I would say some of it is probably missing, and that this is a justification for the strategic Bitcoin reserve, which would be public and transparent, preventing it from being stolen again. Well, that's a very interesting thought. Gold is much easier to steal than Bitcoin. Who knows if it's in the vault or not? Oh, now that's a really interesting one. This is playing the long game to increase demand for or to justify moving to Bitcoin versus gold. That's an interesting thought. I think there's still, it would be persuasive to some people. It wouldn't be persuasive to a lot, but it would be, for some of these sorts of things, you just need like a justification on paper, kind of. You just need to be able to tell a story, and it doesn't really matter how many people really identify with or believe that story. Now there's a story out there, and that provides justification. Samoa Bob, no chance Trump publicly signals the weakness of the dollar. Right, exactly. That's what. So I suppose in the case that Politically Catholic is suggesting that this is a way of justifying the creation of the strategic Bitcoin reserve, then they're taking they're willing to take the risk, or they're willing to take the hit on the dollar publicly because they're already prepared for the lateral move that they perceive they're going to benefit from so much. So that I could see that as a possibility as well. Let me see any of the other comments here. Okay. So let's see what the next. Oh yeah, this was another one with Scott Bessent. Just more along these kinds of same lines. This almost is seems almost like a precursor. This is Scott Bessent opening the front door of the Department of the Treasury for the first time since March 2020. So nobody has been working out of the building for 5 years.
This is the first time this door is opening?
First time it's been open since March 2020, since COVID.
Wow. Why'd you want to do this?
Brett, I thought it was important for everybody to come back to the office, and I think reopening the front door of the Treasury building, what better symbol than we are open for business again and everybody's expected back in the office. Every day when I'm in D.C., I'm coming to the office, and I expect everybody else to.
This is the...
Hear, hear. I may believe in remote work for some people. I definitely don't believe in remote work for federal employees. Donald Trump's new transportation secretary, Sean Duffy, is announcing a federal investigation into California's high-speed rail project's funding and mismanagement.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Kiley. I represent California's 3rd District. California's high-speed rail disaster is the worst public infrastructure failure in U.S. history. Guess there are at least a few people who still support high-speed rail in California. But very few. California's high-speed rail disaster is the worst public infrastructure failure in U.S. history.
I wonder how much they're being paid to be there. Isn't that interesting, though? There's been relatively very few protests as of late, so it's all the more telling when they do show up all of a sudden. So quotes, a couple quotes here. Legislators demanded an audit to investigate where the $17 billion already spent has gone. California's high-speed rail disaster is the worst public infrastructure failure in U.S. history. This, to me, reads like a pretext for beginning to apply pressure to Gavin Newsom. Remember, I played the clip the other day of Bill O'Reilly talking about Eric Adams knowing where the bodies are buried with respect to Letitia James. And he said, take my word for it, they're coming for California next. And this right here, the high-speed rail fraud, $17 billion that went to, what do they have, like 1,600 meters or something of high-speed rail built for $17 billion. Somebody wet their beak. Somebody wet their entire body many times over. I wonder what sorts of things they're going to uncover as they begin to investigate the funding and management of this project. Now, I don't know how much. Let's ask Grok real quick. How much? To see what the character of this investigation is. How much federal funding went into the California high-speed rail project? Received significant federal funding over the years, though exact totals depend on when accounts for allocations, grants awarded, and funds actually dispersed. Based on available data, here's a breakdown. And now it's sitting here thinking, not actually giving me the breakdown. So there are significant. What I was looking to see is if there was I couldn't remember how they'd funded it, and if there was significant federal funding that went to it, which it turns out there was. Then obviously the Department of Transportation has a significant vested interest in determining that. It's just not. Oh, of course. Right when I hit stop, it starts doing it. Let's refresh this. Regenerate. Okay. Over 6.8 billion in federal funding, with some estimates suggesting up to 7.7 billion when including smaller grants. Key contributions include $3.5 billion from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009 and 10, with about $1 billion briefly canceled in 2019 but restored in 2021. $3.1 billion awarded in December of 2023 under the Biden administration's bipartisan infrastructure law. $202 million in 2023 for grade separations in Shafter, plus smaller grants like $16 million for rail integration. However, as of February 20, 2025, an investigation led by Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is reviewing the use of these funds, particularly the $3.1 billion grant, with up to $4 billion potentially at risk of being withdrawn. This suggests that at least $4 billion of federal funds are currently committed or in play, though the total dispersed amount may vary depending on project milestones. Looking for a more precise figure, details of specific ads, funds spent versus allocated. Let's say funds spent versus allocated. If you guys just get like a wild hair up your ass and you have a question about something, like it doesn't matter what it is, just go to Grok and start asking questions. And especially now with Grok 3, you'll be amazed at the quality of information that you'll get back and the speed with which you can do it. And you can alternate between find these facts and like analyze this or speculate about this. Okay, so it says for the California High-Speed Rail project, distinguishing between funds allocated and funds spent. As of February 21, 2025, requires piecing together available data. Here's an analysis focused on federal funding with some state funding context. So total allocated suggests federal funding allocated to the project ranges from 6.8 to 7.7 billion. Has a breakdown of all of that. The unspent portion, as of November 2024, approximately $4.3 billion of allocated federal funds remained unspent. This includes parts of the original funds. Spent to date, at least $2.5 billion from the initial ARRA allocation has been fully spent, matched by state funds on early construction in the Central Valley. Okay, so it looks like they have roughly $3 to $4 billion of federal funds have been spent, leaving 2.8 to 4.3 unspent. So they're essentially investigating, number one, just so they can claw back that $4 billion, and it's also going to be a great pretext for beginning to dig into Gavin Newsom's improprieties. Josh Ham says, I think Elon is still building boring companies, so that underground rail will be possible. Also might be necessary for building habitation on Mars. And one other project that I've been hearing about from a few different places I'm listening and watching is potential revival in the talks about a railroad going from Moscow to New York, I believe. Or maybe I think it was Moscow to New York. And that's it's been talked about many times before, and there's the possibility of those talks being reignited, which would pair well with the desire to annex part of Canada, to run that railway through there. You guys are flying in the chat here today. Rob P says, Grok is great at code. Help me build a server in minutes. I think I have. Do I have a video here? Yeah, I've got a video related to Grok later, so I'll come back to that. Here's Marco Grande talking about Zelensky. Zelensky is he done fucked up.
When President Trump posts that President Zelensky is a dictator without elections, what are you thinking?
I think President Trump is very upset at President Zelensky, and in some cases, and rightfully so. Look, number one, Joe Biden had frustrations with Zelensky. People shouldn't forget it. There are newspaper articles out there about how he cursed at him in a phone call because Zelensky, instead of saying thank you for all your help, is immediately out there messaging what we're not doing or what he's not getting. I think the second thing is, frankly, I was personally very upset because we had a conversation with President Zelensky, the vice president and I, three of us. And we discussed this issue about the mineral rights. And we explained to them, look, we want to be in a joint venture with you, not because we're trying to steal from your country, but because we think that's actually a security guarantee. If we're your partner in an important economic endeavor, we get to get paid back some of the money the taxpayers have given, close to $200 billion. And it also, now we have a vested interest in the security of Ukraine. And he said, sure, we want to do this deal. It makes all the sense in the world. The only thing is I need to run it through my legislative process. They have to approve it. I read 2 days later that Zelensky's out there saying, I rejected the deal. I told him, no way, that we're not doing that. Well, that's not what happened in that meeting. So you start to get upset by somebody. We're trying to help these guys. One of the points that the president made in his messaging is not that we don't care about Ukraine, but Ukraine is on another continent. You know, it doesn't directly impact the daily lives of Americans. We care about it because it has implications for our allies and ultimately for the world. There should be some level of gratitude here about this. And when you don't see it and you see him out there accusing the president of living in a world of disinformation, that's very counterproductive. And I don't need to explain to you or anybody else, Donald Trump's not President Trump's not the kind of person that's going to sit there and take that. He's very transparent. He's going to tell you exactly how he feels. And he sent a message that he's not going to get gamed here. He's willing to work on peace because he cares about Ukraine. And he hopes Zelensky will be a partner in that and not someone who's out there putting this sort of counter messaging to try to, hustle us in that regard. That's not going to be productive here.
Man, he's it's so great seeing all these different people just exceed expectations completely after spending years just being constantly let down. I mean, this is just rhetoric, but that's how low the bar is. Just be rhetorically good. And we'll take that for now. As Rob P. says, they're getting uncut interviews from reporters who were wronged by CBS. That's correct. This is Catherine Herridge. She's actually a decent, honest reporter. She's gone independent. And someone pointed out this video had been up for like a day on her YouTube channel, and it had like 200 views. Here, it's got 2.5 million on X. But her channel is obviously, she's literally got an uncut, like, hour-long interview with the new Secretary of State talking about one of the biggest news items right now, and it had a couple hundred views on YouTube, very obviously being deboosted. But here on X, it's up to 2.5 million. $1 super chat for Screwed Up Texas. Thank you, friend. Appreciate that. Then there was something else up here. Maybe there wasn't. Here. Georgie Castrati says, extracting Zelensky from the Ukraine is going to be extremely difficult. There will be no Gaddafi moment here. Maybe like a Perón instant. He's going to Argentina, if anything. FB informant says, apparently Zelensky is protected by British special forces and intelligence. He probably would have been deposed long ago without the British. Absolutely. Yeah, no question. And in that interview I mentioned with Scott Bessent, he said that he had a similar story where he said he went in and he met with Zelensky, and they were talking about the deal with the rare earth minerals. They were negotiating. Okay, we're going to get our... So what he said is the money that has gone to Ukraine from Europe is largely loans, so they're secured. The money that's come from the United States has been in the form of grants. So they're like, we're happy to work out a deal with you where we'll get commercially invested in the country, which will naturally mean we have a security interest in the country. So we're not just like deploying troops there, but we're getting paid for... We get those minerals, so we have an incentive to provide protection for you, and we import those minerals back to our country. And they made this deal, and interesting. As of 6 minutes ago, Zelensky just gave in to President Donald Trump, now signing a deal to let the U.S. access critical minerals deposits in Ukraine. Very, very interesting. Because what Bessent said is the exact same story. He said he agreed. He told me he was going to be going to the summit and signing the deal there, and then he didn't, and now he's talking shit. Well, now it looks like he actually has signed the deal. There were rumors going around that they actually don't even have the minerals, and that the whole thing had been bluster from Zelensky. So that's interesting. I'm interested to see how this story continues to develop. $20 super chat from Screwed Up Texas. Thank you. He says, all glory to God. Hail Christ. Hail Christ indeed. Glory to God. All right. Continuing. There's a clip here from 48. We gotta have a 48 clip in every episode. This is him at CPAC. That's really quiet. This is going to be a hard one to hear because I'm not going to be able to bring this up a whole lot, I don't think. Let me know how the audio is now. And let's go.
Germany's entire defense is subsidized by the American taxpayer. There are thousands upon thousands of American troops in Germany today. Do you think that the American taxpayer is going to stand for that if you get thrown in jail in Germany for posting a mean tweet? Of course they're not, right? So the point that I try to make to our European friends, and I think that they're our friends, I believe that, I know President Trump does, is that friendship is based on shared values. You do not have shared values if you're jailing people for saying we should close down our border. You don't have shared values if you cancel elections because you don't like the result, and that happened in Romania, you do not have shared values if you're so afraid of your own people that you silence them and shut them up. So let's have shared values. Let's defend democracy. Let's have free expression, not just in the United States, but all over the Western world. That is the path to strong alliances in Europe.
That is my vice president. That's so rhetorically effective. Our support and our defense investment in you will be contingent upon you holding to these values you proclaim to embrace. Let's actually hold yourself to those values. Free speech, freedom of expression, democracy. You really believe in those things, huh? Well, if you want us to keep protecting you, to keep subsidizing you, then you're going to have to appoint the political leadership that we ask for. And if you don't, then we're happy to pull out and leave you to your own issues because we don't have any shared values. So why would we continue to engage in this relationship where you just siphon wealth away from us? And you do things like today it was announced that the British government has arm twisted Apple into giving them some sort of backdoor into their cloud services or something like that, which is just an immediate security threat for all Apple customers around the world. I would expect that this administration is not going to look kindly on that, and they're going to drop the hammer in some sense on the British government and pressure them to withdraw this. But increasingly, it's looking like everyone's talked about how U.S. war with Russia, U.S. war with China. At this point in time, it's probably more likely that the United States gets into some sort of a military conflict with a European or with the UK. With one of those nations, it's more likely that military conflict breaks out between them than anywhere else. Devin Erickson says, why is it J.D. Vance saying all these things? It's not quite for the same reason that vice presidents have often been viewed as a bit goofy or dumb. You see, the role of a vice president in realpolitik is often to float ideas that the administration might have to distance itself from. It's a good short-term tactic, but it's dumb in the grand scheme of things because it makes your VP a lot less electable when you're out. The Trump administration is smarter than that. One of Trump's great talents is brand building. He knows what his voters want and has no need to use his vice president as a canary in a coal mine. In fact, that's what Trump is often, the canary in the coal mine. But he's using this distancing effect to another purpose. More than one, in fact. Vance's role is to say things that Trump knows will be wildly popular with his voter base at home, but very unpopular with our European allies. What this means is that abroad, Vance is bad cop, who softens the vassals up for Trump to come in and negotiate. He's ideal for this role because he's a highly intelligent and eloquent speaker who can address the effete intellectual European leaders in their own language. At home, this raises support for the administration in general, but also specifically positions Vance for a 2028 run by showing him off as a particular combination of toughness, intelligence, and relatability. As someone who is willing to point out the obvious thing that everyone is thinking to powerful people who don't want to hear it, he appears to have been selected for precisely this purpose. And watching him puncture the entitled autocratic European political class has been a pleasure to be savored slowly, like fine wine. Absolutely. All hail 48. Now we got another one. Actually, you know what? I'm going to save this one for now because that one's kind of long and I've still got a lot of stuff to get into. So there's a good video here from Pete Hegseth, fact-checking the media and filming it directly from his office in the Pentagon. But we'll watch that one on Monday and move on to the next thing here. So the U.S. Marshal Service has now deputized members of Elon Musk's private security detail, giving them certain rights and protections of federal law enforcement agents. Musk is not eligible to have a U.S. Secret Service detail, meaning members of his personal security detail were limited in what they could do in Washington, D.C. Now that members have been deputized, they have more rights and could be authorized to carry weapons on federal grounds. Article here from CNN. There's a couple points here I wanted to bring up. So it's not immediately clear how many members of Musk's security team were made special deputies. Now that they've been deputized, they have more rights and could be authorized to carry weapons on federal grounds. It also means that if something went awry with the detail, the Marshal's Service could be held legally liable, one law enforcement source said. Some people close to Trump's White House have been taken aback by the scale of security that has surrounded Musk since he became a regular presence in Trump's orbit last year. The detail rivaled only that of the president himself, the sources observed. Imagine being taken aback by that fact. That's like the least surprising fact ever. Musk, who's running the new Department of Government Efficiency, has become increasingly concerned with his security since Trump took office a month ago and has told those around him that the level of death threats against him has increased, according to a person with direct knowledge of his comments. He hinted at those concerns during an interview at the Conservative Political Action Conference on Thursday, saying on stage, "I don't actually have a death wish." And that leads to this clip here.
I'm open to ideas for improving security, I have to tell you. I don't actually have a death wish, I think. But it's not that easy. Yeah. I mean, yeah. But I have I've had even people like President Bukele from El Salvador who managed to put in prison 100,000 motorist thugs. And he was he called me, he's like, "I'm worried about your security." I'm like, you're worried about my security? I'm like, what? Okay. That's
I mean, yeah, talk about guts to do that down there. I mean,
yeah, totally.
And survive.
I was like, how did you put all those thugs in prison without dying? Because it seems like that would have been not easy, Well,
I'm open to... I would like to know how he put all those thugs in prison without dying. Bukele replied and said, "You could hire literal ninjas to protect you and some former Navy SEALs. Do it." Autism Capital. I love how Bukele is always interacting with Autism Capital. He says, "What about samurais? Can he also have samurais?" And Bukele said, "The sky is the limit." Mr. Bukele, when we send you Will Stancil, can you make sure he gets a fitting cellmate? Any of the MS-13 guys should be fine. Shout out to Bowtied Ranger. He says, "If you or Elon ever need elite private security, quickly hit me up. I have access to the best." I'm genuinely, I've wondered this for so long. How on earth is Bukele still alive? He clearly has to have very well-connected, very wealthy backing and support to have done everything that he's done and still be alive. I don't even know if there's ever been a reported attempt on his life or anything like that, which is very surprising. So Trump and Pam Bondi's DOJ just determined that the current level of removal restrictions for administrative law judges are unconstitutional. This means cleaning out the obstructionist administrative judges will be easier. This includes immigration judges. Now, these administrative courts are hives of scum and villainy. In many cases, the agency itself is responsible for the appointment of these judges that are ultimately required to judge the agency. They're closed courts. There's no jury trial. So anybody who's been caught up in trial with the SEC or the EPA or any of these rogue federal bureaucracies has been, they're basically just kind of SOL. They're just going to get yanked around. The FTC, the FEC, all these different administrative courts. So this is what Acting Solicitor General Sarah M. Harris says. Pursuant to 28 U.S. Code 530D, I'm writing to advise you that the Department of Justice has concluded that the multiple layers of removal restrictions for administrative law judges violate the Constitution, that the department will no longer defend them in court, and that the department has taken that position in ongoing litigation. In Free Enterprise Fund versus PCAOB, the Supreme Court determined that granting, quote, multi-layer protection from removal to executive officers, quote, is contrary to Article 2's vesting of the executive power in the president. So this is a case from 2010. 15 years ago, the Supreme Court determined that multi-layer protection from removal for executive officers is contrary to Article 2's vesting of the executive power in the president. The president may not, quote, be restricted in his ability to remove a principal executive officer who is in turn restricted in his ability to remove an inferior executive officer. A federal statute provides that a federal agency may remove an ALJ, quote, only for good cause established and determined by the Merit Systems Protection Board on the record after opportunity for hearing before the board. So a federal agency may remove an administrative law justice only for good cause that has been established and determined by the Merit Systems Protection Board on the record after opportunity for hearing before the board. So there's these layers of bureaucracy that you have to go through to remove one of these judges. Another statute provides that a member of the board, quote, may be removed by the president only for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. So that board, the members of that board, the Merit Systems Protection Board, who are the only people who can remove or permit the removal of an administrative law justice, the member of that board can only be removed for these reasons. Consistent with the Supreme Court's decision in Free Enterprise Fund, the department has determined that those statutory provisions violate Article 2 by restricting the president's ability to remove principal executive officers, who are in turn restricted in their ability to remove inferior executive officers. So, note that the posture that they're taking here. They're saying, this is the law. The Supreme Court has determined that these statutes here are unconstitutional. So now we are bound by our obligation to the Constitution. The Constitution says these laws, these codes, these statutes here are unconstitutional, so it would be illegal for us to enforce them. That's going to make a legal challenge to that very, very difficult. Fenderson Bounce says, how come we can't just remove them if their job is stupid? Well, because of those statutes. Now, this here is very important news. From Cremu, says the biggest news today should probably be about one of the executive orders from yesterday evening. Trust me, it's big. The president just authorized Doge to start cutting regulations. The executive order is from February 19th. It's called Ensuring Lawful Governance and Implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency Deregulatory Initiative. This order starts off huge. Remember those recently created Doge team leads going into every agency? They're going to work with agency heads in the OMB to review all of the regulations across a number of huge categories. Which categories? Let's see. And it's got there's text here from each of the relevant parts of the executive order that Cremu is relating to. The first category is those rules and regulations which violate the law of the land. Unlawful and unconstitutional regulations, things that agencies enacted, but which they shouldn't have been able to do. Now you might ask, who decides what's lawful or unlawful, constitutional or unconstitutional, a good or a bad interpretation of statutes, prohibitions, and the law writ large? Try to keep up because the administration outlined this a few days ago. And this is from a few days ago. It's official. Employees in the executive branch may no longer contradict the president on matters of interpretation of the law. This was the whole Chevron deference case hinged around this, where Congress essentially has been writing their legislation to offload the responsibility for lawmaking to the experts. So Congress just issues this their legislative process, leaves things open-ended and vague, and delegates the authority to the relevant experts and agency heads and whatever to be the decision makers who are effectively creating the law. And then on the other side, you have the president is being restricted by the judiciary from exercising his power as an Article 2 executive. So effectively, then all of these different departments and agencies answer to no one. They're now both legislative branch and executive branch, and effectively their own judicial branch as well. So this separate executive order he issued, where there was a little bit of outcry and then people moved on from it, said this: the president and the attorney general, subject to the president's supervision and control, shall provide authoritative interpretations of law for the executive branch. The president and the attorney general's opinions on questions of law are controlling on all employees in the conduct of their official duties. No employee of the executive branch acting in their official capacity may advance an interpretation of the law as the position of the United States that contravenes the President or the Attorney General's opinion on a matter of law, including but not limited to the issuance of regulations, guidance, and positions advanced in litigation, unless authorized to do so by the President or in writing by the Attorney General. This is the Article 2 executive. And we've got a visitor. There he is.
Can I have some pineapple on
You already brushed his teeth? You already brushed your teeth. Did you enjoy your movie? Yeah, you like it? Are you going to be a little dragon tomorrow? Nope. Tell me about your movie. What was it called?
How to Train Your Dragon.
How to Train Your Dragon, yeah. What was your favorite part?
Your chair got burnt.
You just burned my chair with your fire breath?
Uh-huh.
You're a dragon now?
Uh-huh.
You silly boy.
Tell your sea salt joke or whatever.
What's your sea salt joke?
What's a sea salt joke?
Swimming in salt water.
Why do let me think.
What swims in seawater or salt water?
What swims in salt water?
What swims in salt water?
You gotta laugh. Humans.
Humans, huh?
Why do humans swim in salt water?
Humans always do that.
Why?
Why do humans and ocean animals swim in salt water?
I don't know. Why?
Because pepper water would make them sneeze. Tell that to your friends.
They just heard you say it. Because they got the mic is here, see? See the pig dirks over here? They got oinks in the chat for you. They got dragons in the chat too, because you're a little dragon.
Can I see?
Yeah, see the little green guys?
Uh-huh.
Those are dragons.
Are they breathing fire?
Yeah, I think so.
Look closer. Zoom in on them.
I can't. The computer screen doesn't work the same way as a phone screen. It's not a touch screen. All right, I love you, big guy. Give me a smooch.
I love you too.
Have a good
Can
sleep.
you ask them to do mountain lions in the chat?
I don't know if there are mountain lions on the as an emoji. If there is, then they will, and mommy can show them to you on her phone. Okay. All right, I love you, big guy.
Can you ask them to do that?
They heard you. There's a kitty. It's kind of like a mountain lion. All right, go with mama.
It roars.
It roars. Love you, dude. The pet roars. I choose you, big guy. All right. The young prince showed up, and now he's, if I'm hearing correctly, it sounds like he's making issues for his mom outside the door. Okay, let's continue here. The next category of regulations that Doge will be purging is sizable. Doge was tasked with purging the federal government of socially significant regulations that Congress didn't roll out and regulations that are costly for private entities without benefiting the public more. This next category of regulations is where things get huge. Doge will be purging all regulations that impede innovation and infrastructure, make it harder to respond to natural and man-made disasters, and just generally anything unnecessarily standing in the way of business. And here's the actual text of it. Regulations that harm the national interest by significantly and unjustifiably impeding technological innovation, infrastructure development, disaster response, inflation reduction, research and development, economic development, energy production, land use, and foreign policy objectives. And regulations that impose undue burdens on small business and impede private enterprise and entrepreneurship. Now, obviously, this is a major task, but don't worry. The next section says which regulations to focus on first. It says to focus on regulations that are particularly important. This is totally logical. Get rid of the big barriers to growth first and then move down the list. The next section might be my favorite part of this whole order. This section calls for an end to bureaucratic overreach. It says that if a bureaucrat is doing more than they're required to, they need to stop it. This means fewer bureaucrats abusing their authority. And the text of it says, this is enforcement discretion to ensure lawful governance. Subject to their paramount obligation to discharge their legal obligations, protect public safety, and advance the national interest, agencies shall preserve their limited enforcement resources by generally deprioritizing actions to enforce regulations that are based on anything other than the best reading of a statute, and deprioritizing actions to enforce regulations that go beyond the powers vested in the federal government by the Constitution. Additionally, if agencies are currently engaged in overreach in the enforcement of rules and regulations, they're going to stop. This can also apply to rules and regulations that the president does not want enforced in a given way based on his valid interpretation of said rule. So that other executive order that I just read for you guys a second ago, they issued that one and then issued this one with the basis of that previous one. And finally, the order says what to do with new regulations. Run them by Doge, and if they're a barrier to business or a burden on the public, they won't go into effect. And this is what it says. Promulgation of new regulations. Agencies shall continue to follow the process set out in Executive Order 12866 for submitting regulations for review by OIRA. Additionally, agency heads shall consult with their Doge team leads and the administrator of OIRA on potential new regulations as soon as practicable. In evaluating potential new regulations, agency heads, Doge team leads, and the administrator of OIRA shall consider, in addition to the factors set out in Executive Order 12866, the factors set out in Section 2A of this order. Every new regulation will be reviewed, and every existing regulation will be reviewed too, and all barriers to growth that can be extirpated from the Federal Register will be extirpated from it. This authority is expansive and unprecedented, and the admin was building up to this. And just to be sure, there's still more to come. Doge is enabling the digitization of records, the installation of modern systems and tools that will enable the U.S. to be governed in a modern, rapid, and flexible way. That's its purpose, is making a 21st century government. And why? Well, obviously because regulations are burdensome, the spending has been too high, and so on, but this order contains another clue. Section 1, purpose. It is the policy of my administration to focus the executive branch's limited enforcement resources on regulations squarely authorized by constitutional federal statutes, and to commence the deconstruction of the overbearing and burdensome administrative state. Ending federal overreach and restoring the constitutional separation of powers is a priority of my administration. One of Trump's goals is ending the secret fourth branch of government that persists between presidencies and ensures Democrats are always in power. It is an explicit goal of this administration to end the, quote, administrative state. In their fact sheet on this executive order, the presidency stated that it is their goal to end the extreme burdens on the American people from this unconstitutional fourth branch of government and to stop them from prying into American lives forevermore. Quoting, eliminating unlawful regulations and enforcement. The accumulation of federal regulations and their burdensome enforcement, including legally suspect regulations, has stifled economic growth and constrained Americans' freedom. The Biden administration imposed a historic $1.7 trillion in costs on the American people. This executive order stops and reverses the regulatory overreach and abusive enforcement, ensuring that the operation of the government is responsible, lawful, and efficient. It's hard to overstate how huge this order is. There are hundreds of thousands of federal regulations, and a very large portion of them can be stripped back with executive authority alone. And now, Doge has been enabled to start that process with all that entails. That entails a lot, but I'll cut myself off here, and keep in mind, this is just the first month of this administration. And there's a link here for the executive order if you want to go read the whole thing yourself, as well as the fact sheet for it. So the biggest takeaway from this is that it now permanently enshrines this administration's explicit goal of ending the administrative state. And also note that every new regulation that comes up now has to be funneled through Doge. So Doge is very quickly becoming one of the most powerful and influential parts of the administration, of the executive branch, generally speaking, which is going to make it, obviously, none of us is new. Obviously, down the line, there's going to be dangers here, and like who's going to take it over, and how are they going to weaponize it and manipulate it, yada yada yada. Yes. Thank you. Human beings exist. This is the age-old issue of government. These things never go away. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. We're not like stupid boomer cons who think you just write the thing down and then it just enforces itself. But the creation of Doge has, the temporary organization part of it is going to be sunsetted July 4, 2026. But the USDS, the United States Doge Service, is going to persist. And it's going to be one of the most powerful agencies in the government. Let me catch up on some of your comments here. Josh Ham says, so this means that Trump and co. are beginning the argument that all administrative law must be in line with the executive. He's about to make all federal rules and regulations comply with his will. Exactly. Politically Catholic says this is a tremendous in-kind tax cut that Doge is about to give us. Yes. Get ready for 6% GDP growth and negative inflation. I don't know about negative inflation because there's going to be lots of other things that are going to happen that are going to be very, very inflationary. But hopefully these things can sort of offset each other enough. If you'll notice, Scott Bessent is constantly talking about disinflation. He's looking for disinflationary effects, which implies the expectation is that there is going to be continued inflation, but the goal is to make that inflation more controllable, and they're pushing really, really hard into actually getting true wage inflation. I would say over the next few years, it's going to be like the first time in, I think it's like 40 years, that we actually are going to get true wage inflation. It's been a long time coming, and there's a lot of upward room for that. Fender Sunbound says, it seems like every member of this admin was forced to read Yarvin's open letter and turn in an essay on why it's dope prior to being hired. Yeah, no kidding. Politica Catholic says, deflation is the natural order of the market, and inflation isn't the cause of growth, nor does deflation cause credit crises. Illiquidity causes credit crises. And after what Doge, Trump, and the Fed have been doing, we're not hurting for liquidity anymore. Interest rates have come down every single week since Trump took office. I don't know. I think Europe and Asia are going to export their deflation to us. That's possible. Similar thing happened in Japan in the 90s when it exported its deflation to us. I think, what time is it here? I got to keep it going. So I'll have to discuss this more on a later episode. But Samo Bob says wage inflation and housing prices go down. I think housing prices are more likely to stick. I think this is going to be part of their goal is to try to make housing prices stay relatively normal, kind of lock them in where they are right now and try to get wages to catch up to them. I want to get this in here. I've been waiting for a couple of days to mention this. A little bit self-serving, I suppose, but worth considering. This was going around the other day, a Slate article. Who's afraid of Hassan Piker? He's hot. He's dangerous. Young men actually listen to him. Is he what Democrats are looking for? Yes, please. Please, please, please turn Hassan Piker into the figurehead of the Democratic Party. I beg of you. Do that. No, at his house. So I said, I'm trying to figure out how to say this as opaquely as possible. They're on a pretty clear trajectory right now. Starting with, the right's podcast bros are trying to get around us. Then, the right's podcast bros got Trump elected. Then, we need our own podcast bros. Then, is this our podcast bro? You are here right now. A lot of people who read this tweet, I think, stopped there. The rest of this is very important, though. What happens when they realize that not only is Hassan Piker not the podcast bro they're looking for, but they cannot and will not ever have a podcast bro because the fundamental predicates of their worldview preclude them from ever developing their own podcast bros? Well, what do these people ever do when they realize their enemies have something they can't have? Fill in the answer in your own mind. They've already tried the deplatforming and censorship angle. It didn't just fail, it made the podcast bro phenomenon even more powerful. One might speculate that they'd learn from that experience, but LOL, LMFAO even. Keep your heads on a swiggle, podcast bros and appreciators. And real ones know what heads on a swiggle references. So again, I'm trying to keep this opaque, but as I've been thinking through, people are like, what are they going to do? What's their angle going to be? What's the new thing that they're going to try? And people have talked about the long A word, the one they attempted on Trump last year. Talked about Elon Musk beefing up his security. So it may be that they have to go after some softer targets. Related is this story that Andy No has been following for a while. The Trantifa terror cult leader, Ziz. You kind of put two and two together here. It may not be everyone's thinking, oh, they're going to try to go after Trump. They're going to try to go after Elon. Yeah, they may have to settle for a more attainable target. But that kind of makes sense to me. There's a number of reasons why. I don't want to lay this all out completely, but there's a number of reasons. Just sit and kind of ponder it and think about the different aspects of utility that would be there for them with something, with taking an approach like that. There's like the disincentivizing, talking about certain things publicly. There's, I don't think it would work out for them to start taking those sorts of tactics on board. But it definitely is not a world that I want to live in. So let's just say that I hope, yes, Tucker. I hope Tucker. I hope, Joe Rogan. I hope Sean Ryan. And even someone like Tim Pool. Like, these aren't smart people. They're gonna go after. If they're gonna pick someone, they're gonna pick someone who they think is important or something, and someone who's easier to get at. So I just hope it doesn't come to that. All right, let us get through this this thread here from John Carter. It's long, but it's worth it. He says, Trump's talk of annexation strikes many as a negotiating troll and an absurd and irresponsible one at that. Canada's Conservatives were poised to win the next election, and now that's been endangered. And for what? Canadians would never give up their sovereignty. They hate America. Well, it's not so crazy as all that. There are compelling reasons for Trump to make a play for Canada, and it is not so unrealistic to expect the Canadians will change their mind about it. Buckle in. This is a long thread in which I'll explain why Canada has become a security threat to the U.S. and how Canada can probably be bloodlessly conquered by color revolution. Full disclosure, this is an adaptation but not a copy-paste. This is largely original content of a much longer essay on this subject which I published a few days ago. You can find the link on my profile in my pinned post. And if you're not following John Carter, what are you doing? Go follow him at Martian Wordlord. While I'm at it, I want to emphasize at the outset that I'm not advocating for annexation, but simply explaining the logic behind it and the strategy Trump appears to be pursuing to achieve it. Whether or not union with the United States of America is in Canadians' interest is an entirely separate discussion. Maple Maidan, which is just so good. Maple Maidan. The why of annexation is straightforward. Canada's elite have placed Canada at the exact intersection of the Monroe Doctrine and Manifest Destiny at the absolute worst possible time. America has had an eye on Canada from the very beginning. That's what the War of 1812 was all about. That's why America tried to get British Columbia and Newfoundland to join before they joined Confederation. This is just Manifest Destiny. One unified Anglo-empire stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific and from the Gulf of Mexico, America, to the Arctic Ocean. That's been on hold for a couple hundred years north of the 49th because the U.S. wasn't strong enough to beat back the British, and because they seemed to have figured that Canada was friendly, stable, prosperous, and white, so good enough, eh? Only Canada is no longer friendly, stable, prosperous, or white. Which brings us to the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine is simply that the U.S. treats the Americas as its backyard and will not tolerate foreign powers establishing beachheads on its property. This started all the way back in 1823 when President No. 5 James Monroe declared that no new European colonies would be permitted and initiated a policy of steadily pushing the European empires out of the Western Hemisphere. Political interference is considered a hostile act under the Monroe Doctrine. This was expanded by President No. 25 Teddy Roosevelt in 1904 with the Roosevelt Corollary, which legitimated direct military intervention in Latin America in order to maintain stability. So how is Canada in violation of the Monroe Doctrine? In so many ways. Canada has been demographically vandalizing itself for decades now by importing Chinese and Indians in absolutely staggering quantities, motivated by the silly idea that Canada can also become a great power if only it can increase its population to 100 million by the year 2100, the Canada 2100 plan. This has been disastrous for Canadians who increasingly see themselves marginalized in their own country. More seriously, this massive immigration has led to Canada's state apparatus being thoroughly penetrated by foreign influence operations right up to the parliamentary level. China and India have been influencing Canadian elections, putting their agents in parliament, something like a dozen members of parliament are suspect of being de facto foreign agents, bribing government officials. The Canadian government investigated itself and found there was no problem, which is very reassuring. Lax Canadian immigration, it is simply impossible to vet people when you're bringing in over a million of them annually, a few percent of the country's population, all legally, has led to a higher incidence of encounters with persons of interest on terror watch lists at the US-Canada border. Obviously, not all of them will be intercepted. Furthermore, not everyone with ill intent is on a watch list. So how many terrorists have entered the US thanks to Canadian airports? Canada has allowed itself to become a global hub for the fentanyl trade, importing precursor chemicals from China, manufacturing the chemical weaponry in criminal laboratories, smuggling the poison across the US border, and allowing the proceeds to be laundered through its overheated real estate market. China has been heavily investing in Canadian natural resources with significant stakes in some of the largest Canadian mining companies. In the last couple of years, the Canadian government has started to put limits on this, blocking sales to certain mines and in other cases ordering Chinese investors to divest. Still, China remains a major player, and enabling it to corner the market in various strategic minerals is not in U.S. interests. The Canadian Armed Forces have become an absolute joke. It's a fraction of the size it should be given NATO commitments, but size isn't everything. The CAF used to be known as one of the best trained militaries in the world, small but professional and lethal. Following decades of social engineering by the Liberal Party, complete with systematic political purges of the officer corps, training and fitness standards have collapsed. The CAF is a joke now. Not only small and poorly equipped, but also fat, slovenly, and badly trained. On the one hand, this means the U.S. could conquer Canada over a long weekend. On the other, this drops responsibility for defense of the Arctic against Russian and, yes, Chinese ambitions into the already overstretched arms of the U.S. military. The Canadian people are almost totally demoralized following a decade of Trudeau's malign sabotage of the country. The economy is crap. Per capita GDP has fallen below Alabama's. Housing is some of the most expensive in the world. Taxes chew through most of people's paychecks in order to keep public sector parasites, who account for a quarter of the workforce and eat over half the economy, in the good life. The once vaunted public healthcare system is in shambles, with the MAID euthanasia program being the only thing that seems to function. Even more taxes have been piled on by a ridiculous carbon tax. He's got lots of graphs and images here, so if you're just listening, I encourage you to go check them out. Kingpilled Substack is where I'll post all the links for this after the show is done. While Canada's economy has been rotting away, its ruling elite have been putting the country's identity and heritage to fire and sword. Canada is multicultural, a post-national state with no core identity, in which anyone can be Canadian because a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, bud. Except white Canadians, who are not really Canadian because they're guilty of settler colonialism and genocide against the First Nations, a claim for which zero proof has been offered, and must therefore recite ritual land acknowledgements before every public gathering, fly their flag at half-mast, and provide public sector workers with an extra day off every year on Truth and Reconciliation Day. While the statues of the country's founder, Sir John A. Macdonald, are torn down, vandalized, or hidden, and his face is taken off of the money. While their churches are burned to the ground. While the government imports new and improved Canadians at such an incredible pace that the old bad Canadians can watch themselves be ethnically cleansed from their cities in real time. While the government gives the new and improved Canadians preferential access to economic opportunity via mandated diversity hiring initiatives. The COVID years should absolutely not be forgotten. As bad as things got in some of America's blue states and cities, the entire country of Canada was far more tyrannical. Canadians were locked in their homes, interprovincial travel was blocked, police went house to house making sure no one had unauthorized guests over, vaccine passports were imposed for access to businesses, the media drove Canadians into an absolutely insane state of mass psychosis, Canadians who refused the shot were kept prisoner within their own borders by being banned from boarding airplanes. It is not accidental that the Freedom Convoy happened in Canada. Canadians are usually a very placid people, happy to let the government govern. It takes a lot to push Canadians to the point where they will organize a logistically challenging vehicular process spanning the length and breadth of the world's second largest country in the dead of an infamously savage winter. It takes a lot, and the Canadian government did a lot. And how did the government respond? By declaring martial law, freezing bank accounts, and beating the ever-living shit out of the protesters with riot cops. Canadians have been driven to such a state of despairing rage that they've been hoisting the black flag of fuck Trudeau all over the country as an indication of their intention to start slitting political throats the next time they're allowed to vote. There's just one problem with this. That has so far failed to cohere into anything resembling a populist insurgency. The total absence of any meaningful populist opposition to the ruling Laurentian elite is quite amazing when you consider that such parties have either already taken power, are on the cusp of taking power, or at the very least have a significant foothold in the national legislatures of essentially every European country, despite all the demonization, far-right Nazi, etc., cordon sanitaire tactics, lawfare, etc. Even the UK has the Reform Party, an upstart anti-immigration party that grabbed a handful of seats in the first election it entered mere weeks after the party formed. The only anti-immigration nationalist populist party in Canada is the People's Party. They've been around for several years already, have not once broken single digits in polling, and have not taken a single seat in Parliament. For whatever reason, and there are several, they have utterly failed to connect with the Canadian people, despite being the only party to take a hard line on immigration, which is a wildly popular position amongst the Canadian electorate. The current favorite to win the next election are the Conservative Party of Canada, led by Pierre Poilievre. Well, great, right? They're base conservative. What's the problem here? The problem is that Poilievre is a squishy globalist stooge whose only selling point is that he's not Justin Trudeau. Pictured, Pierre Poilievre, who is not Justin Trudeau. Poilievre is conservative insofar as he wants to get rid of the carbon tax, eliminate interprovincial trade barriers, which, yes, those are insane, and get the ball rolling on northern resource development projects that have been strangled with red tape and First Nations whining. That's all great. Unfortunately, he's also gung-ho on Ukraine and enthusiastic about continuing mass immigration. Recently, Poilievre was bullied into announcing that he'd reduce mass immigration to only 250,000 per annum, still close to 1% of the country's population. However, this was after several months during which, believe it or not, the Liberal Party had actually tacked to the right of the Conservatives on immigration. No one really believes he'll keep his word on this. Pick Related is still online at the Conservative Party of Canada website, by the way. You deserve an immigration system that works. On the other side, the favorite to win the Liberal Party leadership race is Mark Carney, a central banker and self-described globalist elitist. The boomers seem to like Carney, and he's arguably more charismatic than Poilievre, who shares Pete Buttigieg's pathic affect but lacks the charm. Since he entered the race, the Liberal Party's polls have improved and the Conservatives have weakened, both quickly and dramatically. Poilievre's only real strength is that he is not Justin Trudeau, so now that Justin is out of the running, Poilievre has been kneecapped. From the perspective of MAGA, it doesn't much matter whether Poilievre or Carney ultimately takes over the Prime Minister's office. It's a choice between globalist stooge number 1 and globalist stooge number 2. As it stands, Canada seems to be trying to turn itself into Ukrainida. All of the insane, multiculturalist, globalist woke nonsense of the UK, and all of the artificially whipped-up nationalism and massive systemic corruption of the Ukraine. The goal would be to turn Canada into the same kind of security nightmare for the US that the Ukraine was turned into for Russia. A culturally indistinguishable border state worked up into frothing hostility for its much larger neighbor, which will happily set about sabotaging that neighbor's economy by, e.g., playing games with natural resource flows. Medium to long term, a hostile Canada and hawk to globalism would be a very nice staging ground for foreign militaries. Nor is it at all out of the question that the Canadian military could itself be rapidly built up via a combination of Chinese investment and massive recruiting of the absurdly large surplus population of foreign fighting-age males that the country has been busily filling itself with. That might seem over the top, but Canada's ruling elite is universally deeply hostile to Red America. They are ideologically committed to the most extreme forms of globalism. Globalist influence, at least of the left variety, I know some of you will complain about this characterization, has been excised from the executive branch of American government, and the new management are following up their hostile takeover of central office with a rampage through the state apparatus, tearing up the enemy's tendrils by the roots. It's nothing less than a catastrophe for the Wefoids. Having been defenestrated from the imperial core, their next best option is to retrench in the imperial provinces, fortify them, build them up, and use them as a staging ground to apply external pressure to the revolutionary usurpers. It seems that Trump's team understands all of this perfectly well. Canada has turned into a corrupt narco state that hostile foreign powers are wearing as a skin suit. There's no possibility for meaningful internal political change on the necessary timescale, and if things continue on their present course, the country could rapidly evolve from a minor annoyance to a major security threat. At the same time, as it stands, the country is defenseless and demoralized. It has never been more ripe for the plucking. Canada is in violation of the Monroe Doctrine, and manifest destiny calls. If Trump pulls it off and turns Canada into the 51st state, or the 51st through 61st states, depending, 47 will become the president who unified North America under the Stars and Stripes, at a single stroke more than doubling the country's landmass, establishing a new colossus that is now the single largest country by landmass on the planet, with a combined area of 19.8 million square kilometers, or 22 million square kilometers with Greenland, even larger than the Russian Federation with a mere 17.1 million square kilometers. I need to have a drop right here that says, "What the fuck is a kilometer?" An essentially impregnable continental fortress surrounded by ocean on three sides, with its only land frontier a heavily fortified wall stretching across a brutal desert. This is the kind of thing they carve your face into mountains for. All right, I got to open this one. Look at that. The only thing that really stands in the way of this new colossus is that the only shred of identity that Canadians really hold on to is that they are not Americans. Canadians have defined themselves as not Americans since before Confederation. The country was founded by United Empire loyalists who left the United States rather than betray the crown and join in the Liberal Revolution, and Canadians have jealously guarded their independence ever since. Decades of Liberal Party social engineering have steadily stripped away every form of ethnic particularism, but the old words, "we stand on guard for thee," still carry some resonance in Canadian hearts. Now, the simplest way to annex Canada would be to just send in the military. However, this is clumsy and ham-fisted. It makes you look like the bad guy. The international community would shriek, not that anyone cares, Margaret, but still. It would also plant the seeds for generational resentment, risking Canada turning into a vast frozen Northern Ireland, in which the Canadian monarchist army wages a dirty war of assassination and sabotage. Canada's infrastructure is spread out and hard to defend. Such a situation could rapidly turn into a quagmire. If you're going to avoid a quagmire, you need to make Canadians want union. To go back to the Ukraine analogy, Ukraine was ripped away from Russian influence by fomenting a color revolution, the Euromaidan, which placed a proxy government favorable to the West and hostile to Moscow into power. This ultimately resulted in a very destructive war because obviously Russia wasn't happy about having a NATO puppet on its doorstep. In the case of Canada, the government is already in the hands of people hostile to the US, or at least to the revolutionary element that the American people have rammed into the heart of Washington, which is busy remaking the country. Ironically, the solution for the US turns out to be the same: a color revolution to peel a country out of the sphere of influence of its adversaries and into its own. Also, ironically, fomenting a color revolution may be the best way to prevent a war. The plan seems to precipitate a Maple Maidan with a two-pronged approach. First, tariffs are used to put extreme pressure on the Canadian economy. Even the threat of tariffs will do a lot of damage just by panicking investors. The Canadian economy is already on very shaky grounds, and the Canadian people are already in great financial distress. Crack the economy and you've got massive inflation, unemployment, mortgage defaults, homelessness. It could turn into a severe crisis very quickly. In isolation, this would just piss Canadians off, and indeed, this has already happened, as you can see from the anthem booing at Hockey Fight in Canada. So in addition to economic pressure, you need psychological operations. You accompany the tariffs and the threat of tariffs with a full-spectrum assault on the legitimacy of the Canadian ruling class, attacking them on all of the grounds laid out earlier in the thread: economic mismanagement, corruption, mass immigration, the contempt they show for Canadian culture and heritage, the deplorable state of the Canadian military. And really just a whole bunch of other things. You're actually spoiled for choice because the Laurentian elite really are one of the most feckless and competent ruling classes in history. You attack along all available vectors, exploiting the deep-seated disillusionment of the Canadian people with their leadership. Of course, the propaganda offensive also includes a positive vision: the prosperity that will be generated by union, the freedoms Canadians will enjoy, the possibility of finally settling the North. Naturally, the Laurentian elite will reject all of this out of hand. They will start desperately casting around for alternatives, especially as the tariffs have caused a very real economic emergency. The reaction of Canada's ruling clique to the crisis is all part of the comedy. First, the no-core identitarian post-nationalists wrap themselves in the flag they so recently flew at half-mast, beating their chests in declarations of undying patriotism for a racist, settler, colonialist, genocidal, imperialist project, proclaiming the absolute sacredness of the sovereignty of a country built on stolen land that anyone can belong to because a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, but an American cannot be a Canadian, only Chinese and Indians can become Canadians. Second, they start proposing treacherous stuff like intensifying ties with China, or downright goofy ideas like joining the European Union. Because clearly there is a world of difference between giving up sovereignty to the unelected European Commission in Brussels and giving up sovereignty to the elected government in Washington. The pick is from The Economist, by the way, why Canada should join the EU. Europe needs space and resources, Canada needs people. Let's deal. So now the Canadian elite are floundering around making themselves look ridiculous. For a time, you've got a sort of patriotic dead cat bounce, as Canadians instinctively rally to the maple leaf. But the Canada First rhetoric rings very hollow to a lot of Canadians who have watched in disgust for decades, as the very same people have repeatedly betrayed the country for decades. The ultimate goal is to move enough Canadians from no to yes, such that a referendum on union can receive a clear democratic mandate. Is this possible? Well, look at this recent poll. When asked if they'd ever vote to join the US, 77% of Canadian youth said, "Fuck you, no." Pretty clear, right? It's a non-starter. But look at the final question. When the pot is sweetened with full citizenship and conversion of all loonie-denominated assets into greenbacks on a one-for-one basis, suddenly 43% of the same demographic are saying, "Ah, you bastard, you got me, I'm in." And look at this. Look at these results here. So you've got the teal is 18 to 34, the purple is 35 to 54, and the pink is 55 and over. The first question is, I would never vote for Canada to become part of the United States. 55 and over is 87% yes. And the youngsters are 77% yes, saying, yes, I would never vote for Canada to become part of the United States. There's a number of other questions here, but the bottom one, if the United States offered all Canadians full U.S. citizenship and a full conversion of the Canadian dollar and all personal financial assets into U.S. dollars, I would vote for Canada to become a part of the United States. Only 17% of boomers say yes, but 43% of Zoomers and millennials say yes. So almost 1 in 2 would say yes under these sorts of terms. It's worth going and looking at some of these other questions, and I'm going to keep it going. That poll results suggests that Canadians are, in actual fact, just haggling over the price. Trump sees that, and he intends to grab Canada by the beaver. And remember, we're still in very early stages here. So far, all of this is just rhetoric in the legacy press, posturing by politicians, discourse on social media. It hasn't taken to the streets yet. But already, just in the last couple weeks, I've watched sentiment shift hard on social media. Canadian uniparty politicians cannot say anything without getting absolutely plowed in the replies by people saying, "Fuck you, you don't care about Canadians, you people have ruined this country, we want to join America." The party's just getting started. Man, this thread is already way longer than it should be, so I'm going to leave it there. If you'd like to read more about this, I have a whole essay about Maple Maidan, which goes into a bit more speculative detail about how it could all play out. Very little of this thread is directly copied from that article. This is mostly original content. See how I spoil you. So you won't be reading just the same stuff you've already read. Link at pinned post. The man is a good writer. Mr. John Carter, powerful mutual, Canadian. Go follow him. Martian Word Lord, and word is spelled with a Y. He's a word guy. Okay, let's talk about women voting here real quick. I think I've read this. I might have read this green text in the past, but it's worth bringing up again, and I've got a couple other things to relate it to. So this is posted by Zarathustra, and it's about women leaning left, men leaning right. This is a problem. You see, the reason we have elections is because they're a cheaper proxy than war. In elections, the biggest side wins, which would probably be the case with war too. But in elections, no one dies, and you don't have to spend money on weapons, etc. So it's a good proxy. This is Moldbug posting here. Politics and war are on a continuum. However, it doesn't work when one side is significantly weaker than the other, such as when women are on one side and men on the other. In this case, even if the women outnumber the men and would win an election, the women would not win a war, and so the proxy is no longer an adequate proxy. And if we were to switch from elections to war, it would be one side that is mostly women against the other side that is mostly men. Men would win easily with very small casualties. So why would men consent to being ruled by elections when they could more easily win a war? This is why women never should have been allowed to vote. It nullifies elections as proxies for war, and we end up having to have war instead. This, like I said, I saw this before, and it struck me that this is probably, if you had a reasonable normie, this is probably the most effective case against the 19th or in favor of repealing the 19th Amendment that you could make. Leaning into this, the fact that what having women vote, what it has done, and particularly because all of the brainwashing factories have focused on driving a wedge between men and women, which the incentive for driving that wedge is the fact that women can vote. That has set it to where you now have men voting against women, which from a practical strategic point, this doesn't work as this green text here lays out. Like it's you now have eliminated the usefulness of elections being a proxy for war, because now you have the decidedly weaker side overpowering the stronger side. If we're going to have a proxy for war, you're not going to be able to do the weak dominate the strong for very long before the strong no longer want to be dominated by the weak. And now you don't get elections anymore. So actually saying that women should not vote is a pro-democracy statement. No, actually, we want to keep elections around. We want to maintain the sanctity of elections. We don't want to devolve into violence. It's good to be able to have a nonviolent proxy for war. But in order to maintain that nonviolent proxy for war, women can't vote. We're very pro-democracy here, you know. And this is interesting. Aristocratic Utensil posted this. Question for Grok. What cultural critique would you employ to persuade women to give up their right to vote? This is Grok's answer. Imagine a cultural critique rooted in the idea that modern democracy, with its obsession over individual rights, has eroded something deeper. Communal harmony and the natural something, Chinese characters I think, division of labor, that once held societies together. You could argue that voting, as a symbol of atomized power, pulls women away from a more primal, influential role, the stewards of family and culture. The pitch might lean on a romanticized past. Think pre-industrial tribes or even Victorian ideals, where women's authority wasn't diluted by a ballot box, but concentrated in the home, shaping the next generation's values directly. The critique could borrow from thinkers like Rousseau, who saw excessive individualism as a societal rot and twist it. Women's suffrage, while sold as empowerment, actually traps them in a masculine game of power struggles and abstract debates, disconnecting them from their supposed true strength, nurturing, intuition, and moral grounding. Add a modern swipe. The chaos of X-posts and 24/7 news cycles shows how voting fuels division, not unity, and women, as the civilizing force, might reclaim their influence by rejecting this circus altogether. To persuade, you'd frame it as liberation, not loss. Ditching the vote isn't subjugation, but a bold opt-out from a broken system, a return to a sphere where influence isn't diluted by partisan noise. It's a hard sell, obviously, and it'd lean heavily on nostalgia and gender essentialism, which plenty would call out as bunk, but that's the cultural angle dialed up to 11. What do you think? Want me to tweak it or push it farther? I told you guys, like, this new Grok is very, very good. And I'm not saying, oh, you know, Grok is based. This is a very based take. And honestly, I think this is the trajectory. This is where we're headed. You can't put that back in the box. The repeal the 19th, we're going in that direction in one way or another, effectively. And honestly, I think it would be on this basis. I actually hadn't really put all this together in the way that it was presented here. I was familiar with the last thing I read you about it eliminating voting as being a proxy for war, but selling it this way and this way in particular is fantastic. Voting is enslaving the women. This is how you frame it. Not voting is liberatory. It liberates you to actually exercise your feminine power, which is being the civilizing force at home. Like, this is, when you say you want the woman at home raising her children, you're quite literally saying, I want the women to be predominantly responsible for brainwashing the future generations. Like, that's a way of rephrasing it. The women ought to be responsible for brainwashing the future generations. That's what they want to do anyways. They're just doing it in schools where they're brainwashing them with gay shit. Brainwash your own child at home and network with all the other moms, all the other Instagram moms, and coordinate your brainwashing together. And raise your kids barefoot out in the barefoot in the grass and dirt. Okay, let me just buzz through these last ones here real quick. I don't want to skip them. So, speaking of Grok, here is, I've mentioned Replit before, and this guy Amjad Masad, this app that he's created, this program, Replit, for building apps really, really quickly. This guy here from Replit is combining Grok with Replit to build an app, and it takes him less than 5 minutes to build it. Watch this.
Hey, it's Matt with Replit here today. I'm going to show you how.
Oh. Slow down.
Hey, it's Matt with Replit here today. I'm going to show you how to build with Grok 3 and create an app in Replit without writing any code at all. All you need is a Replit account. All you need is an X account logged into grok.com. And this is really straightforward. What we're going to do is we're going to say to Grok 3, help me create a brick breaker game with HTML. So this is going to write HTML to build us a brick breaker game. You don't really need to worry about what HTML is. Then we're going to create an app on Replit. We're going to create a Node app. A Node app is just for JavaScript, and you can use that to run HTML. The great thing about Replit, you don't actually have to worry about configuring any of that because we have AI tools for you. So log into Replit on the homepage, you create a Node app. Grok's done writing this brick breaker game because it's really fast. We're going to create a new file in our directory called game.html. And in that new file, we're going to paste the output. So now we have an HTML file in our Replit app with the output. We're going to go to Assistant, which is our tool for editing code, and we're going to say serve the game in at game. The at symbol mentions the file. Hit enter. And now Replit Assistant is going to configure the settings for this app. It's going to install the dependencies that we need, and then it's going to set up a server around that app in index.js. We're going to apply all of those to run the file. So now what you're going to see is that it installs the dependencies, configures the packages, and then executes the game. And I need to actually be quick to get to the mouse. And now we have a brick breaker game running in our browser. Now this is cool. You might say, okay, you get a pop-up, game over. This is running locally, and we're actually good on that. You can take this game, click the deploy button. We're going to recommend a deployment for you. You don't have to worry about these build settings. We'll call this brick breaker grok, and deploy. Replit knows the run command to use. It knows the correct build command to use. I'm going to wait 2 minutes, and we'll come back and see what happened. So we're back. It looks like our app is deployed, and what I can do here is open the deployments pane. I'm going to click this, and we have our brick breaker game. So this is not running on my computer anywhere. This is not, just a toy demo. I mean, it is fun. It's a game, but this is actually deployed at brickbreakergrok.replit.app. I'll leave this up. If you want to go take a look, you can check it out. But 0 to app in just under 5 minutes with Grok and Replit. Give it a shot. Create a Replit account. Build it with Assistant. Build it with Grok. Really fun way to get started. Until next time. Peace.
When they talk about the productivity boost that AI is going to bring, this is the sort of thing they're talking about. Being able to, I mean, he's building just like a little simple game like that, but it took him 5 minutes from type the thing out to thing is done. So like app building or database construction, or there's so many, but half of this stuff is over my head. I don't even understand it, but I could see plainly in front of me. And I listen to the people who work with this, who talk about the impact that this is going to have. It's going to be massive. And the whole like AI is going to take jobs away is the same old retarded Luddite thing that we've heard for the existence of humanity. It's going to create more jobs. It's going to be a massive productivity boost. It's not going to be Skynet. The Skynet threat comes from other vectors that are incidental to so-called AI. Because now what they have, there's AI, and then there's agents that are software programs that run on AI that will actually automate the automated tasks. So the people who can take advantage of these things are going to increase their productivity relative to those who don't by orders of magnitude. I don't use Grok for any of this sort of stuff yet. I just use it basically as a combination like search engine, and I don't remember the last time I used Google. Virtually never. I just open up Grok and ask questions to Grok because you'll get contextual stuff that you would have to dig more for Google. So it's like I don't really need to worry about, oh, do I trust this? Do I not trust this? Any more than I would with Google. I Google something, but I have to like go through the process of searching. So it's crazy. We went from, it was amazing. Like you've got all the knowledge in world history in your hand. You can just pull it out and you can look it up at any point, but you have to manually go dig through all that stuff. Now we've bolted a layer on top of it where I have this agent that I can direct, say, go scan the internet and pull out this information for me and gather that information and present it to me. And it provides the sources and stuff, so you can go look at them if you want. And then you can go another level beyond that, and you can say, explain this in more simple terms, or explain this or add this element to it and re-explain, or whatever. So I use it for researching concepts. I use it for trying to understand different federal processes based on stuff that's in the news. And with Grok 3 now, it's up to date, including like you'll get results on stuff that's happening in real time. It's just crazy. Slutty Milk says, I already am more productive in my own work with AI. Yeah, it just, anybody who is dooming about AI is honestly doing a massive disservice. They may be sincere. I'm sure they believe it. But they're doing a massive disservice to people who they're encouraging to not start taking advantage of these tools, because those who take advantage of them and learn with them ahead of time are going to be so far ahead of everybody else. My son is never going to use the internet the way that I did. He's going to be fluent with whatever Grok or whatever thing is by the time we allow him to use the internet. He's going to be absolutely fluent in it in the same way that, you know, we're fluent in, I don't know, like Twitter or Google or what have you. This is just a quick video. Was not expecting this, and again, just look at the sheer quality here.
Eyes of a hawk and the ears of a fox. Oh. Eyes of a hawk and the ears of a fox. Oh.
Just wild. All right, and then the very last thing here is just a interesting little fun fact. This guy here said, I have to give you the whole thing just for the context, but it says, how are you so happy? Brother, when I was 17, I discovered that I could physiologically stimulate adrenaline release on command in just about any situation. Skill issue. He says, for what it's worth, it's really helpful if you also have the ability to control your tensor tympani in time with the eye movements and breathing. Makes the whole thing far more intense. The tensor tympani is a muscle within the middle ear, located in the bony canal above the bony part of the auditory tube and connects to the malleus bone. Its role is to dampen loud sounds such as those produced from chewing, shouting, or thunder. Because its reaction time is not fast enough, the muscle cannot protect against hearing damage caused by sudden loud sounds, like explosion to gunshots. However, some individuals have voluntary control over the muscle and may tense it preemptively. In Powerful Mutual, Neo Americana said, oh, so that's what the ear rumbling thing is. And this blew my mind. I've never heard somebody else talk about this before. can you do this? Can you make your ears rumble by flexing that muscle? That's what it is. Like, if you can create that sort of, like, I don't even know. It's like a rushing water sound, sort of. I kind of have to close my eyes, roll my eyes back in my head a little bit. But what that is flexing the tensor tympani muscle. Utterly fascinating. What was the thing that he said here is what he actually does. So I discovered I could physiologically stimulate adrenaline release on command in just about any situation. He says the best way to kind of explain would be the following. Go outside, pop on your headphones, and put on some high-tempo music and go for a walk. Look up at the sky and start timing your breathing to the beat, more or less like 2 to 4 short, rapid inhales through your nose, then 1 long exhale. Start trying to time up your eye movements and blinking in similar, but somewhat chaotic fashion, the importance being opening your eyes real wide in time with the exhales. Try to let the music in, your eyes and lungs an extension of it. If you can ear rumble like me, this is a super valuable thing to add on in similar fashion because you feel the beat deep in your skull. If you start to feel a welling up of energy, you're doing it right. Then wait for the right moment and release it all with a big exhale and super wide eyes, and it should rain down throughout your whole body, bringing on a state of total bliss. With practice, you can get it quicker, easier, and longer lasting, but genuinely, I think it's just one of those things you have to practice and get a feel for, like any sort of movement or skill. This guy says, okay, I've tried this, but the result was like every inch of my nerve visibly shaking and I had trouble breathing. I got panicked and scared, lost my soft motor skills for a while. My right palm was curling and all of it was happening for at least 5 minutes. Am I doing it wrong? Yes. He said, I should add that the outdoor walk and music are totally optional, but useful for getting the hang of it. Also, the eye movements, once you have it down, can be done super discreetly. So I've done this many times in public settings and no one is the wiser. Okay, it says, WTF, my whole body's covered in goosebumps. I can't seem to do the ear rumble without rolling my eyes into the back of my head, though. He says, their ear rumbling should come naturally. Some people can do it, some can't. So I've never tried this. Yeah, it almost sounds like a pagan dance ritual, like before they're about to eat a person or something like that. But you know, maybe I'll give it a shot sometime and see what happens. Anyways, all right, that's all I got. Let me run through these super chats here real quick, and then I've got to get over to the King Pill Discord because we are going to be watching. Let me double check. What has the vote landed on? It is not close. Men Who Stare at Goats. So we will be watching The Men Who Stare at Goats in the King Pill Discord in probably about 10 minutes or so. We'll get started. But let me read these super chats and then get out of here. Hit the like button, folks. Hermetica Gemini, $10, said the Fed carry is strong, works in government buildings, schools, nearly anywhere. Know an NSA guy who loves that perk. Can't wait for the seething when Elon's men march into Lib's sacred space, open carrying. Yes. You said Fed carry, and I was thinking you were talking finances at first. $10 from Andrew Starr. We're piling up the Eagle Bucks today, folks. He says, keep your head on a squiggle. Keep your head on a swiggle. The autocorrect got him. Will be the war cry of our time, to echo throughout future generations, like the thunder from the palm of Zeus. Hear us, dookie heads, and cower unto our wrath. That's right. Just wait till I teach Eastwood dookie heads. And then he sends another $5 super chat. He said, my previous chat was supposed to say, keep your head on a swiggle. I shall wear my dishonor as a badge of shame, so my betters can ostracize me at will. Don't worry about it, man. Autocorrect is a bitch, and it gets all of us. And then some leaf bucks from Slosher. He says this is an extremely accurate and depressing summary of Canada's current situation. So we've got one Canadian perspective on it, and then here's the other Canadian perspective. 50 leaf bucks from QWERTY-ZZ7. He says, we won, ya Yankoid. Seems like a regarded take. Regarded. Don't read this guy. In fact, end him justly and immediately. Reductive, false, low IQ take. The only good part is when it says I'll fight forever. And he thinks I'll be talked out of it. Anyway, GJ supposed to be good job. So, And then he said, down here, he says, $5. He says, also John Carter is a known Fed and cat boy enthusiast. Well, I've only had good experiences with John Carter. So thus far, we've got one Canadian reaction that is very approving of the piece, and another one that's not. So I think that the fight to the death is going to have to happen between Slosher and QWERTY ZZ7. We'll have to arrange that at some point in the future. And then I think there was another super chat down here. Let me make sure. I don't want to miss anything. No, that was it. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. Very generous. What a good day. We're at 92 likes. Just need 8 more likes on your way out. We still got 139 watching. I know I went live late today, so I appreciate you guys coming and hanging out late on Friday evening. Have yourselves a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday with another episode of the ASTROLABE, and for several of you, I will see you shortly in the King Pill Discord, kingpill.com. Come join us, and we'll watch the men who stare at goats. For now, I give you Hulk.
When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next President of the United States, enough was enough, and I said, let Trump-a-mania